What's up guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. Today we're going to be back on the twin turbo Coyote notch, trying to get it all back together. So if you remember, this car went off to paint, got a full paint job, came back looking really good, courtesy of Red Dog's Custom Paint up here in Round Rock, Texas. Got all the trim redone, new quarter windows installed. We got the car sitting a little bit better now with the 19-inch ROH drift Rs. And if you guys remember, I had an offset that was sticking out with a little bit too much poke in the rear before, and that was due to the SN95 axles. So I went ahead and got the proper offset wheel to fit back there. And I'm probably just gonna crank the front up maybe a little bit. I think once all the interior is back in the car, the rear is gonna sit down a little bit nicer, although this car does have a rear seat delete. We'll get into that in a minute, but that's what we're gonna be focusing on today, is getting this freshly restored interior that I've done all in the smoke gray, or I should say SEM Presidio gray, get that all back in the car. I'm actually gonna do a column swap. So for anybody who is wondering about putting the newer 90 to 93 steering column in your pre-90 car, yes, it can be done. And in this case, we don't want this wheel. We want things to look a little bit newer, give the illusion that the car is a little bit newer than it actually is. But we're gonna go through that today as well. So stay tuned. All right guys, so I've peeled out the driver's seat, which was the only seat in the car, and the seat belts and the last few little odds and ends in here. We can see that this carpet is pretty nasty. Now, despite the fact that it's pretty nasty, I am still going to vacuum it up first. And you know what? I think probably with some really good detergent or some super clean or whatever, spray that on there and power wash this. It would probably come up really, really nice. However, I'm going to install a brand new black ACC carpet with the under carpet matting as a replacement. So we'll get rid of this guy. We're gonna have a little bit, not a full black and gray theme like I did on the Cali Coupe, but a little bit of contrast in here. And the next thing, I've already started cleaning up a lot of the stuff behind the dash. So all of the HVAC, heater box, a lot of the wiring and everything, because when your car comes back from paint, it'll come back dusty. Body shops try and do a really good job at minimizing, at least they should do a really good job at trying to minimize how much dust gets thrown around, but it's not always the case. So before you put everything back together, you definitely want to go through and clean everything up and make sure that, you know, you're not just putting freshly restored goods or maybe brand new goods on top of a whole bunch of dust or dirt and debris. So I did pull out the headliner, and I actually just finished recovering that this morning with the black suede. If you guys are wondering how I did that, I do have a video when I did the one for the Cali Coupe. So we're gonna have a black suede headliner in the car. And here's our carpet, hiding underneath some trim and some other stuff. I'll fold it over. So despite them being molded to fit, which is a good start, they are not cut. So anybody that has installed an aftermarket carpet knows that you're gonna have to lay it in there and you're gonna have to start cutting holes, and you're definitely gonna wanna measure twice and cut once. So you're gonna be going through the process of getting that installed. And I got the old rear seat delete sitting here. I'm not sure what's gonna be entailed in terms of that, how it goes back in or how it's gonna look, or do I go with a black one? I don't know. Seats, that's another thing. So probably gonna end up with a set of Corbos. I'm not 100% sure yet. I thought I found a really nice set of Recaros, but then the guy sort of changed his mind if he really wanted to sell them or not. So that is that. And then I got the package tray, parcel shelf, whatever you want to call it back here. That's after one coat of paint. I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna vacuum it, brush it, do another coat. And if I have to do up to 3 coats, then so be it. It's kind of a neat little trick for any of you guys wondering. A lot of people say, oh, does the fabric go hard by painting it, and well, it will if you leave it. That's why if you vacuum and you brush it in between coats, it will actually remain soft. So that's about it in terms of an intro. I don't want to babble on too long. I'm gonna go ahead, start vacuuming out the interior of the car, and from there we can pull out this old rug and get started at, well, the new carpet installation, steering column, and getting the dash in. And from there, once those things are back in, this car is going to go back together pretty quick. So let's get started. So I like to lift up both sides, pass all the connectors through, seat belt holes, all that good stuff, get it nice and loose, especially up in the top here around the center console. Things can get sticky around those two bolts that hold the mount for the center console down, that little U-shaped bracket that no one ever puts back on. All right, guys, so the carpet's out, folded up, laying down there on the ground. And in fact, I think I might give it to the new owner of the 85 T-top because, well, that car had like interior shag carpet in it. So any carpet's gonna be better than what's in that car at the moment. So you can see here, everything is out. I went and vacuumed, of course, after the carpet was removed as well. I even found myself a nice little treasure underneath the carpet, some nice wire strippers. So it's amazing what you can find underneath the carpets of these old Foxbodies, because a lot of cases they've been removed at some point or people were doing something. And of course, this one getting coyote swapped and they had to do the drive-by-wire gas pedal and everything else. So I'm sure that was probably a reason. Looks like they ran some speaker wire towards the back as well. So that's probably another reason, hence the wire strippers. But everything is really clean in here. This is originally a Utah car. I'm not going to be doing any kill mat or dynamat or boom mat, whatever you want to call it, mat in this car, just because all of the factory stuff is intact and in good condition here. So things like this is all going to stay. I opted for the carpet with the under mat sound deadener. So it's going to be more of a factory replacement in here. Even a lot of this stuff in the back is in pretty good shape. I did tape up some of the areas just to make sure that they're not going to separate over time. Even the mat on the headliner and everything is still all here, or on the underside of the headliner, I should say, is intact and in place. So one thing that I started working on is this rear window. Since we've got the parcel shelf out, you can see this side is pretty clean. This side is really nasty. So this car had some window tint, the old school purple window tint. It's all faded out. So I've been going through with a razor blade and scraping that stuff off, and it's a pain, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you, it sucks. It's honestly, removing old window tint it's a bad job, but somebody's got to do it. You just take some Windex or some soapy water, razor blade, and then you just get all the old glue off. All I can say is take your time, keep things lubricated so you don't accidentally scrape your window. And then you're gonna probably need a little scraper holder to get down along the bottom side there to get that all done. But this gives you an idea of what you need to do. Now, this rear window doesn't have the rear defrost lines on it. If you have rear defrost lines, well, that's a whole other game. Reality is you're probably gonna have to use something that's non-abrasive. In other words, not a razor blade. Because if you take a razor blade to your rear defrost lines, you're gonna wreck them. So keep that in mind. You might be sitting there rubbing with Goo Gone or Goo Gone, and I know there's a couple like non-abrasive pads that you could use, but there you go. got everything pretty much cleaned up. I'm gonna move on to getting this carpet ready to go in. So I vacuumed profusely, used soap and water, wiped everything down just to get all the dust and debris and everything else out from the inside of the car. Did stuff like the inner sides of the doors, and I'll probably end up putting new vapor barrier on there just to kind of, again, dirt and debris and everything else can get, well, it does get inside your doors. It either makes it past the seals or it'll get in through some of those drainage spots in the bottom over time. And it's just better to keep them off the insides of your door panels. So get those vapor barriered back up. Got the rear glass pretty much clean. I just need to do a little tiny bit along the bottom here. I need my little razor blade scraper handle thingamabobber so that I can just get down in that bottom corner there. But other than that, my rear window is looking a million times better. So now for the carpet, I got it here. You can see this is the ACC carpet. Got this from National Parts Depot. Other vendors do sell this one. So, you know, it's not just from certain vendors. The brand, I'll show you guys what the box looks like. So here we go. Auto Custom Carpets Incorporated, floor mats, trunk mats, sound deadening. Made in the USA, which is cool. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this guy down here like this. And you can see I've got the old carpet sitting here all folded up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this carpet, lay it on top of that carpet, and I just wanna get the center console area right. And I'm gonna deal with the holes probably for the seat belts and everything else once the carpet's in the car, but I do want a general idea of the center section. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Done is I've gone ahead and laid the old carpet inside of the new one, and you can see here kind of these corners. Now just kind of pretend like you're stacking Tupperware or chairs or whatever you want to call it. Just make sure that everything is lined up the way that it should be on both sides. You get all your corners right. Now you can kick and tug if need be, but for the most part, it should fit in there all right. So now what we have is we have a template where we need to cut all our holes. Now, again, I'm really just concerned about the center section, and then the other guys, they really shouldn't be that big of a deal to cut out once they're in the car, just to compensate for any stretching or whatever else. Guys, the carpet is in, it's looking good. I've trimmed it all out, cut out all the little openings for all the holes and such. And some of you guys might wonder, why isn't it pre-cut? Well, it's almost pre-cut to a certain degree. There's a couple little markings on the underside of this. I'll actually show you guys right here with the seatbelt area. See this area right here? This is where it thinks this mounting point for the seatbelt is, but in reality for me it was back a little bit more. And there's these outlines on the underside for the seat areas. Now, mind you, these actually did line up, and what I do recommend is start there. Start with these guys if you can get them to line up, but cut your own areas in the center sections. Do like I did, lay the carpet, you know, the old carpet on top of this new one, so that way you can really give yourself a good template, if you will, because as much as, you know, you would hope that everything would be in the right place and you could just literally cut out those areas that were there, it might not work 100% in your favor. And in fact, I kept this piece here. So if you look here, I believe this was probably for somewhere in this region or either up here, but you can see the difference of where I cut versus where they wanted you to cut. And well, it's a pretty big difference. So do yourselves a favor, don't go by what's necessarily marked on the carpet. You know, less is more. Trim a little less and then trim more as you need it. And other than that, you just got to kind of push firmly in place and just work your way around, take your time, and you'll end up with a really nice result. So before I go putting the parcel shelf back in, I do need to get that razor blade so I can just clean up that rear glass of it, because now is the time to do it. In fact, now would be the time to get that rear glass tinted, but I don't know if I'm gonna go for the tint. I've actually been on this kick with white cars, with just leaving them tintless, just nice and clean and bright, see-through, show off the interior, let people see who you are. Although I really don't like people seeing me while I'm driving. It's kind of an interesting fact about me. You know, people always give me a hard time. They're just like, man, I waved at you. I'm like, sorry, man, I wasn't paying attention. I'm not trying to be like seen. I want people to see the car, but I don't need people seeing me. All right, guys, somehow I managed to do it. I sandwiched myself underneath the car with the little wheel jacks all the way up, and I managed to get this bolt out, and this would go right through here like this into the shaft that goes down to your steering rack. So with this bolt out of this guy, we can go ahead now and drop this column out, which should be pretty straightforward. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna disconnect all the connectors here, and then there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nuts that'll come out, and that should allow us to drop the steering column down. Came out with the shaft in place, so you can see shaft came out there, or that shaft is still in place over there, which means I might have taken this bolt off for no reason. All right, guys, usually the shafts don't come out this way. So normally, like we do, we undo the bolt, and that should have been pretty straightforward, but apparently the shaft wanted to stay up in there, which is fine, because now we have this guy. So all we got to do is make sure that we get, there's a little shaft on the inside here. I don't know if you guys can see that. So we just got to get that lined up, but they are the same. That will slide in there, and we'll make sure we put some grease in here and that this is lubed up nicely, and everything should be good to go. I had to swap out the little bracket here for the brake switch for the old Coyote swap here, so a little extra lube never hurt, guys. So fact is, clean windows is probably the thing that is skipped on the most. I feel like in many people's cars, it is not fun to clean them properly, but the razor blade, proper ammonia-based product, hell, even vinegar will work really good. And then finally a microfiber towel. Just go over everything, look for all the spots, get it clean. This would be the opportunity for window tint, but we are not tinting in this case. And now things look nice and crystal clear. Hell, they even look better than these new quarter windows. They need a good clean as well. So here's our parcel shelf that's been sprayed. It's nice, feels pretty much original. Now this material isn't soft to begin with, this one, and the worst part is it usually, if you get anything in the back, like if you have a dog or a cat in your car, it's like this material just soaks it up and holds on to it and makes it impossible for you to almost vacuum off. But you want to make sure this is as clean as can be before you install it, because again, getting the vacuum back in there after the fact is a pain in the ass. Parcel shelf in, got the headliner reinstalled, and the quickest and easiest way of doing that is by putting your dome light back in. A couple Christmas tree clips that can go in the corners to help you. Then, like I said, I still got to paint the map light, aka penis light there, and that'll be good to go. We're almost in a position where we can actually reinstall the rear plastics. Just need to put a couple of clips in the back of the parcel shelf. There's actually 2 screws that typically go in there as well. But now I want to actually focus on getting the dash bolted back in. Everything is kind of set up in place here. I am going to have some wiring to deal with on the bottom side, some stuff that's specific to the Coyote swap, a couple controllers, and we got turbo smart gauge to consider as well. So there will be something custom that's going to have to happen in the center console, but we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, screw all the dash back in. I want to get the cluster reinstalled. So in case you guys are wondering, the factory cluster is working with the Coyote swap in this car. That's right. So the oil pressure gauge, the coolant gauge, all of those things are working. If you want to know more about that, check out PCP Allen or PC Allen. Forget exactly what his handle is on Instagram and on YouTube. He's done tons of these Coyote swaps, so wealth of knowledge can help you out there. So we'll get the cluster reinstalled, try and get the center console pushed in here or situated, get our glove box back on, and we're gonna be just rolling right along here and one step closer to completion of the interior. One thing that I'm gonna throw out right now, because I know you guys don't always watch these videos to the end, I need some door panels. In the worst way, I have the armrest, but I need a set of power door panels. I don't care if they are 87 through 89 or if they're 90 through 93, I will take them. A reason why I need a set is because the set that came with the car are pretty clean. At first glance, someone had even already resprayed them. In fact, they look really nice. This is the passenger side. There's actually nothing wrong with this one. But here's the driver's side panel. Got the slightest little tear right here. This is driving me nuts. So if somebody's got a panel out there, please let me know, because as much as I could probably repair this sort of kinda, I'm on the fence. So the dash is back installed in the car. I got the climate control hooked up. I even managed to fix the little glove box light. When I was trying to take it out, I accidentally ripped the face off of it. And if this has ever happened to any of you guys before, you know, they do go back together. The only thing was I actually had lost the spring. So I took the spring out of an old like push pen and it fit perfect. So everything is working in there. The battery cable is disconnected at the moment, obviously, because I don't want to drain the battery out. You notice a whole bunch of wires down here. So this car has the upgraded premium sound originally, with the amplifier hiding in the back there. And somebody took it upon themselves to do some interesting wiring. And I think I'm actually going to restore the wiring based on what's going on here, because, well, I just don't like having this run along. You can see where they cut out of the factory harness here. So I'm going to hook all this back up, because the other thing that they did was this was only running into the doors, and the speakers up here, this wire ultimately wasn't connected. So I want to make sure that everything is in fact working and connected, and I'm going to do that and going to clean up this wiring. Probably won't be in this episode, but I am going to cut it out now. And then I'll show you guys what I do to get that all fixed up. Got a few things I need to consider here. Here's the controller for the tach, and this plugs into the OBD2 port of the control pack for the Coyote motor. Then I also have this turbo smart gauge that needs to get mounted somewhere, and then probably most importantly, I have this N gauge, which is going to be allowing me to get all the tuning and everything else controlled and done, which this also runs through the OBD2 port through this connector. So I'm gonna have to get this spliced off so that I can run two things at once. And that's really not a big deal, but just kind of wanted to share with you guys some of the wiring that's going on in here. And I'm gonna cut this out. I'm gonna get this guy for the center console bolted back down, which has the amplifier on the back side. That's gonna free up some of this wiring and mess, and then we're gonna get the center console reinstalled in here. And that way, a lot of things are gonna be in position to go back together. Need to get a new switch for the, what is this? The hazard switch, because without this hooked up, it's a mess. You can see somebody tried to individually pin on all the wires, and yeah, that would have been a serious pain. Looks like they just kind of put some heat shrink around everything, but I'll probably try and get a new connector, see if I can't fix this mess up, and go from there. So here's the center console frame. Need to screw this guy back on in the back here, so I had this off for when I dyed it. And again, when I dye stuff, I usually try and take everything apart as much as possible. You can see that I actually just opted to not dye that black. Sometimes I will go to that extreme and mask everything off and keep that factory strip black, but since we're gonna have a custom plate here, most likely with our gauges, we're not gonna worry about it in this case. So I'm gonna go ahead, screw this guy back on, and then get this installed back in the car. Console is now in. I got the steering column bolted up properly, got the cluster cover on, got the glove box door installed here, and even mounted up the little tack control module. Going to get some wire loom. I'll clean this wiring up right here, but that turned out real nice. And I'm gonna have to do something custom down here for the N gauge and the Turbo Smart gauge. So I'll probably do a custom plate here. And if you guys are wondering what's going to happen in terms of radio, it's probably all just going to be Bluetooth. So there'll be a little Bluetooth transponder somewhere, and that way you'll just be able to sync your phone off the get-go, and you really don't even need to worry about a head unit at that point. So I'll get into more details about that later, depending on which route we go. Other than that, everything is pretty much connected. I cut out all that speaker wire that was routed. All the connections are kind of loose here. I got to get my crimpers and butt connectors and all that stuff. I'll get all that wiring cleaned up. But for now, I'm actually going to reinstall the rear quarter plastics because everything else is good to go. Got all the insulation in place. Got the parcel shelf connected back there with its push pin and screws. So that's all good to go. So why not go ahead and reinstall the rear plastics and not have them sitting around getting bumped and potentially scratched. So I'll get those in, and that'll probably be it for this episode, but we'll see how far I get. A little trick with the seat belts, as I'm sure you guys probably noticed, these were pretty dirty when I was passing them through the rear plastics. So I take some super clean grease remover, or you can use spray 9, anything like that, microfiber, Dawn dish soap, and I let that super clean sit in there for probably about 5 minutes. And just get everything kind of nice and sudsy. Works on the plastic pieces too. Some of you guys might be like, oh, why don't you just order new seatbelts, you know, through LMR or something? Well, I could. Thing is, I don't like the aftermarket belts. I just feel like the quality isn't there, and I don't know, personal opinion, call it. And I feel like with a little bit of elbow grease just like this, things can go a long way. If you guys got a steamer, or maybe your better half has a steamer, that can help a long way as well. I think there's a lot of people, they all have their own different tricks here, but depending on how dirty your belts are, like look at all the dirt coming out of here. So to give you guys an idea how dirty this is, look at that. That's just one belt, guys. Test, guys. Use a white towel. Still dirt coming off. Means you have more work to do. Always be careful with this one down here. I actually use a non-pointy screw if you don't have the right one. In most cases, you won't. So I get creative, because otherwise what always happens, people run this screw right through and it comes out in your door jamb. So just note to self, be careful what you put in here. I'll probably try and find something a little bit cleaner or shallower that I'll get in there. The seatbelt here is drying up. It's looking a million times better. Not sure if you guys thought that I was actually going to leave this ratty old cap unpainted, but of course that got touched up. Got our seatbelt cap here. Make sure that that clips in. Of course, we got this guy. All of these have been given some treatment in terms of color, so everything should match and look nice. Ones are always a pain to get. That's going to be a wrap on this video in terms of getting most of the interior back into this car. Hopefully you guys learned a couple of tips and tricks along the way. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit that thanks button down there. Your support keeps the beer fridge full and cool. So next time that we're working on this thing, I guess we're going to get into the custom gauge mounting in the center. I'll probably go ahead and do some of the wiring for the speakers while you guys aren't looking. It's not too bad for 2 half days of working on this thing and getting it back together. It's coming together pretty quick. In reality, I got to get some turbo filters for the front, because I really don't want this thing running without some filters. Don't need any dust or debris or anything getting where it shouldn't be, so going to get some mushroom filters there for those guys. And need to finish up the door handle, door lock assembly on this side. From there, got to do some subframe connectors, because if you guys didn't remember, there's torque box reinforcements in here, which the person who built this car actually reached out to me a little while back and told me that he makes torque box reinforcement kits, but I don't know why he never subframe connected the car. Maybe he just didn't get that far into the build. And so I got a set of stiflers coming. We'll get those installed and welded up. Then we'll finish off the stance of the car, and then I'll pretty much be in a position for tuning. The last but not least, need to figure out how to get AC in this thing. So that I'm still racking my head around. I'm really wanting to try an electric compressor and try and get it mounted up in an inner fender or something like that, just because we have no room with the turbo setup in here for a compressor. I can fit a condenser in here, the evaporator's obviously still in there. The heater is hooked up on this, so we'll be able to move some of these fittings around, be able to hook up those lines And from there, pressure switch and all that should be pretty straightforward, but you just never know. I'm still gonna need to be able to get something on the controls to activate the AC. There we have it. As usual, thank you for your support. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Until next time, we'll see you here on the Infamous Project.